after we moved in, there was this location that seemed wanting for something. And Steve had the idea of commissioning an artist to do some sort of wall piece on the ceiling. And after a lengthy discussion, we decided that Paul was the best candidate for that, because we knew that in terms of his hybrid work that he could incorporate the inside and the outside, incorporate the history of the house a little bit, as well as the surrounding area, and make something really exciting.
We saw that space as a very a unique opportunity to have one of our artists do a site-specific installation in that space. We have several artists who we considered to do something. It hit me one day after making a trip up there, which you can only get there by crawling through a small crawl space outside our bathroom. You have to climb a ladder. And it's a mess. It's an attic. It's dusty. There's only rafters. There's nowhere to sit. You have to kind of crawl on your hands and knees. And I saw just tons of dead flies and spiders and bugs and things like that. And I immediately thought, you know, Paul Payment would be an ideal possibility for this project because his work deals with hybrids of bugs and the evolution of bugs. And in any old home, there's a history, there's ghosts, there's a lot of things that are happening with the history of a home. And I figured, let's take the concept of the bugs who have lived and died for 100 years in this attic and give them a new life by having them swarm out of the space that they're able to get out of and then hybrid into the contemporary objects of today.
My name is Paul Payment. I started thinking about this idea of the swarm, and I had talked to Heather and Steve about using the outside and the park that's around here and incorporating those things in, but also the idea of moths going into the attic was another thing that came into this concept, and I'd been using this morphing imagery before, but never in this manner before. I've always been fascinated by this idea that insects and bugs haven't really evolved. They've kind of stayed the same through the last 6,000 years or 10,000 years, 600 million years, right? They've been pretty much the same, and I love the fact that technology is changing so quickly. That like a phone that we had last year is now obsolete. And everything's changing so quickly, so there's an element of time in it, and that's where the morphing stages come in too. So these, these PlayStations, the joysticks, the iPod speakers, all of those are, already. By the time I've gotten done painted them, they're yesterday's news. They're yesterday's technology, and they're no longer relevant today. But the insects have stayed pretty much the same the whole time.
Once we moved out of our house in the Richmond and moved here to our new home in Buena Vista Park, we were able to see this space as a unique opportunity to have a unique piece by Paul that not only uses his core objects, which are bugs and technology, but also to incorporate his new ideas of installation, site-specific installations.
I've got some ideas for sculptural pieces, but also I love the idea of relief pieces where the pieces are actually part of the wall, they're part of the architecture, and this particular installation allowed me to do that too. I mean, that was like another foray into that. With this space, I mean, for one, it was on a ceiling, at the top of a staircase with a skylight at the top. So because of that, it dictated kind of what I had to do. The format was there. It wasn't something that I had chosen, which to me is a lot more exciting because then I've really got to go back and think about how I can take what I've done in the past and kind of incorporate it and to change it and to have to modify it. And that's where the evolutionary stages come in. Rather than having that central image, the skylight created another challenge. But this space, of course, was a really unique space, being a ceiling at the top of a stairway or staircase. All those things were really different and new.
the unique opportunity when you are a gallerist is that you are able to commission your artists to do unique pieces for you, basically, which are unique and interesting and different from what you'd see in a gallery show.
I really would like the viewer to see my paintings as more, not necessarily as paintings, but as images, as part of a room, as part of an experience, rather than an image that they might see in a book or in some other place. And so this piece really kind of expands that idea, because it's not an image that you'd see on a wall. It's not framed. It's something that's part of an entire experience. Overall, when I first started the piece, I started off with the overall kind of composition, the swarm-like composition where there are all these moths involved in it, and they're either ascending up into the attic or they're coming out of the attic, whichever way you choose to see it. Having the skylight there instead of a central image, it kind of forced me to break it up into steps instead, which I think is a little bit different because it's more like animation in a sense. It also evokes time, as a progression, rather than something that's based on pure perception. One of the problems that I was faced with too is that I wanted to have these this progression with moths in there with 96. Originally I didn't have 96 moths, but I knew that there was going to be a lot. In fact, I think originally I had 128. And the problem, of course, is because it's on the ceiling, is that it involves scaffolding, and also because there's a repetition of each image, it involves a lot of time on my part. And it would have taken me a year to come up here, to be in San Francisco every weekend, painting each one of these moths, and that just seemed impossible. And I had worked on a couple of other installations a couple months back where I was using aluminum. And one of the great things about aluminum is that it's so lightweight that you can affix it to a wall easily with double-sided tape, and it just seemed like the perfect solution. And it's easy to use. It's easy to cut out. It's lightweight. And it works great to paint on. So I love painting on that surface, and it just seemed easy to be able to do that in my studio and then bring it up and actually install it here rather than having to paint it on site. I'd been working with aluminum on other installation pieces I had done in the past. In 2006, I did an installation at the Armory Center for the Arts. In 2005, I did an installation at Heather Marks Gallery, and I was using aluminum at that time and using acrylic on aluminum rather than what I had been using in the past, which was egg temper on panel. It became impractical to have to use egg temper because it's so labor intensive. And I'd been working with acrylic anyways, painting on aluminum, and it just seemed like the right solution to be able to paint each one of these individual pieces on aluminum, and then affix it to the ceiling rather than having to come up every weekend and paint for an entire year. I could work in my studio.